What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thought we would do something a little bit different today. I have put together one of my favorite decks. Um, like when I get together with my pod, there are a couple of different things that I play, but this is my main deck right here. Is it perfect? Hell no. But if you enjoy a mono black and shenanigans, this is the one. So it's appropriately titled, So What Are We Playing? And I'm going to add the Moxfield link into the description of the video, so don't worry about that. But we are playing Tiny Bones Bauble Burglar. And for those that aren't familiar with it, uh, the way it works is whenever an opponent discards a card, exile it from their graveyard with a stash counter on it. Then during your turn, you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So think about that. We're not limited to what kind of cards they might be discarding. Anything goes. It's going to get a stash counter on it as long as Tiny Bones is on the field. And the beauty of Tiny Bones Bauble Burglar is that even if he is removed, once he comes back, all of those cards that were exiled are exiled again with the stash counters on them. So it's fair game. It's a lot of fun. As we could see, it even has a second effect where if you pay 4 and tap it, each opponent discards a card, activate only as a sorcery. So basically, Tiny Bones is one of those few commanders where it basically can proc its own effect, right? So we want our opponents to be discarding, and we get the benefit with Tiny Bones, but Tiny Bones also has the ability to cause it. It is incredible. So basically, the point of this deck is, what are we playing? We're playing our stuff, and we're playing our opponent's stuff. It's essentially a discard deck. So let's break down some of the support situation here. So, creature-wise, I'm only running 13 creatures. Now, keep in mind, the way we can look at this is we can modify and adjust this however we want, right? No two players are the same. Play this deck how you would feel comfortable. And we're going to go through even our sideboard later on, some things that you could tech in and out depending on your play style. But let's start with just some of the stuff that I would play here. So the very first creature that we're going to add to this is Baron Helmet Zemo from the Marvel deck. And whenever you cast a black spell from your hand, Baron Helmet Zemo connives. So when we connive, we're drawing a card and we're discarding a card. And if we discard a non-land card, Baron Helmet Zemo is going to get +1/+1. But the secondary effect is Boast. So exile any number of black cards from your graveyard with 15 or more black mana symbols among their mana costs. Copy those exiled cards. You may cast up to 3 of the copies without paying their mana costs. Activate only if this creature attacked this turn and only once each turn. So basically, we're going to swing with Baron, right? And once we're in the process of swinging, I mean, if we have a situation where our graveyard has that 15 costs, we can play bigger things. And a little bit later, we're going to start getting into what some of those things could be. And I'm telling you, it is a lot of fun. This card, I was back and forth on it, right? Like, I kind of look at this card and I'm like, well, all right. So the assumption is that I have these expensive things in my graveyard. It's going to happen, right? We all know it's going to happen. One way or another, somebody might mill us. There's so many different scenarios, and especially with Graveyard Synergy, what we don't want is Graveyard Hate, and we'll touch base on some weaknesses to this deck soon. Not that Graveyard Hate will shut it down, but it obviously could be a problem in this particular situation here. Moving on. So we have Bloodline Keeper, which transforms. And let me break this down for you. So for 2 mana and then 2 black mana, we get a 3/3 vampire with flying. It also has the ability to tap itself and create a 2/2 black vampire creature token with flying. And then it also can transform with 1 black mana if we control 5 or more vampires. And then on the back end of that, we have the Lord of Lineage, with is a 5/5 flying vampire with other vampire creatures you control get +2/+2. Okay. And we still have the ability to tap it for the 2/2 black vampire creature with token with flying. So we're not running a very creature heavy deck, right? It's not creature heavy at all, and we're going to need some sort of presence. Often in games, what I found out throughout the years, and this probably holds true with really any format in Magic, things with flying typically have an advantage. So here we are just making these vampires one after one. We might have the opportunity to build up our board. And we're also going to have flyers. So if our opponents have flyers, this is going to give us an out. I'm not saying this is the best card to put in this deck. Some of the synergy is a little bit of an issue. Like, there is a little bit of luck that comes into play. Hopefully, Bloodline Keeper can stay on the board. For me personally, though, hoping that it kind of flies under the radar and having the ability to tap it a few times and get the creature presence, especially with flying, that's a huge positive to me. Does it need to stay in this deck? Probably not. I personally like it, though. So moving on, we have Elderfang Disciple, which is basically just 1 mana, 1 black mana, and it is a creature with the effect, when Elderfang Disciple enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. So, the beauty of this card is very simple. It does not target our opponent. It's a passive effect. Each opponent discards a card when it enters. So, with Tiny Bones on the field, here we are. We're about to get 2 cards that are basically being dropped and going to have stash counters on them. Maybe it's a land, maybe it's something else. But regardless of which, we're getting 2. So think of it like this. When our turn comes back to us with Tiny Bones, we basically are always going to have card advantage. Now, Tiny Bones can't protect itself. It could easily be removed to removal. There's no doubt about that. But the plus side of Tiny Bones is simple. The fact that we're putting the stash counters on things, and even if Tiny Bones is removed, once Tiny Bones comes back, we have access to those cards again. And for 2, getting removed, coming back 4 with commander tax is really not all that bad. I'm telling you, is this deck perfect? Hell no. Is it a lot of fun? Absolutely. So then moving on, the Gray Merchant, so better known as Gary. So when this creature enters, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to life lost this way. And of course, each black mana symbol and the mana cost of permanents you control counts towards your devotion to black. This deck is very heavy on enchantments. And a lot of cards that have presence on the board have more than 1 black mana symbol. This is what I would consider a staple for most black decks. This is the kind of card you want to be able to search out later on or draw into later on. We basically want to burn with this. And the beauty of this card is each opponent loses X life, and then we gain life equal to the life lost. So, think about that for a second. I mean, if X happens to be, let's call it 20, and it's 20 for opponent 1 and 20 for opponent 2 and 20 for opponent 3, right? That is absolutely insane. We have just went up 60. 60 life gain. That's insane, especially for black in a single instance. I love this card. If you're a mono black player, you need to run this card. Like, yeah, this is a win con in and of itself, trust me. I've won quite a few games with it. So moving on then, we're now up to Heck Dies. Heck Dies is when this creature enters, each opponent discards a card. So again, we're not targeting. It's entering the battlefield, and each opponent's going to discard. So our objective is basically to always have Tiny Bones on the field. Rule of thumb is always make sure that your deck is functional without your commander. This deck is functional without the commander, but life is better with Tiny Bones on the field. We have other win conditions, and we'll get to them, but we always want Tiny Bones out if we could. Here's one of my absolute favorite cards, okay? The Hypnotic Spectre. So it's a 2/2 Spectre with flying, and whenever Hypnotic Spectre deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. Okay, so, again, it has flying, right? So we're going to have advantage, usually. As long as there's not something with flying or reach, we'll be able to ping. Once we ping, the person that's taking that damage is going to discard a card at random. They don't even have the choice. They might have Farewell sitting in their hand, right? They might have a board wipe. They might have something spicy that they're sitting on, that they're thinking, okay, when turn comes over to me, I'm going to deal with this issue. And then you poke them with the Spectre, and randomly, that just happens to be the card that goes out of their hand. I love this card, and the price is actually really decent on it. Next one. This is a quite interesting card. I don't see it too often. We have Ob Nixilis Unshackled. So, for 4 and then 2 black mana, we have a demon with flying trample. And whenever an opponent searches their library, that player sacrifices a creature and loses 10 life. So, this is probably something that's going to come out onto our field later on, right? Which means if our opponents are going to be searching out their decks, right, they are going to pay dearly. Okay, they're going to pay. And who knows, they might want to pay the 10. They might want to use like a merchant scroll or something, search out their deck, lose the 10, and be like, okay, I'm in position to win this. And you know what? We'll see what happens at that point. But I don't like losing 10 life in a single instance in Commander. But you know what? Call me crazy. And then our second effect is whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Ob Nixilis. So that is any creature, and when it dies, and that qualifies under a lot of scenarios. You know, be it one of our opponents is playing like aristocrats, and maybe they're sacrificing things. They're just going to beef this fella up for us. And again, he's got flying and trample. For mono black, this is a pretty spicy card in the long run. Moving on to Rankle, a Master of Pranks. Now, Rankle has flying and haste, and whenever Rankle, Master of Pranks, deals combat damage to a player, choose any number of the following effects. So it would be each player discards a card, each player loses 1 life and draws a card, or each player sacrifices a creature. So the fun thing about Rankle is you're always going to be able to decide what's best for you given the situation. And the even better thing is if all 3 of those things are not ideal, you don't have to choose any of them. You could literally choose 0 and just have a 3/3 flyer out on the field. Rankle is so much fun, and often he kind of, no pun intended, flies under the radar because people will look at it and be like, well, there's definitely a downside for when it affects you as well, but that's okay. The ball is in your court on your turn. With Rankle, you get to decide. You get to look at your hand. You get to look at your mana curve. You get to take every little thing into consideration and be like, you know what? I could discard a card. I'm okay with everybody drawing a card, and who knows, that one life that gets lost by one of your opponents might burn them for lethal. Or you're dealing with a pesky creature on the field, and hey, you know what? If an opponent has just one and you really need it to be gone, boom, there you go. Sacrificing is so much better than just straight up targeting removal. I think we all know that. So, this is one of my all-time favorite cards. This is basically my go-to commander that I run in Magic Arena. Sheoldred, and flips into the True Scriptures. I love this card. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, she is a 3 and 2 black mana, and she's a 4/5 with Menace. And whenever Sheoldred enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. So there's a lot of scenarios, and at least in a lot of games that I've played, where my opponents might not necessarily have a board state that comes with a bunch of creatures. They might have like a pesky planeswalker that is just a huge nuisance. And we can go down the list of all of those nuisance planeswalkers. But having removal for the planeswalker is absolutely amazing and a great feeling to have. Just having Sheoldred in your hand is just a good feeling, because you know you're going to have some sort of answer to something. You're going to force your opponents to make a tough choice. And again, we're not targeting. It's each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. That's great. And then for the second effect, we have pay 5, exile Sheoldred, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So, two things I want to point out. One, the 4 and then 1 black, we could activate this the same turn we play Sheoldred. If by chance we have the 10 mana to spare, we can just do it. We're not bound by summoning sickness or anything like that. We could just make this happen. And then secondly, activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So we get to do this if just one of our opponents, not both, just one, has the 8. And then, once transformed, when Sheoldred comes back as the True Scriptures, it comes back as a Saga, and Saga, the first lore here, is for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planewalker that player controls. So now we're getting the ability to target things. So let's say we had the 10 mana, and we played it. So we played Sheoldred. Our opponents are each going to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker of their choice. Now it's coming back as the True Scriptures, and we're going to target out whatever it is we need to destroy or deal with. That is amazing. Your opponents very well could have some sort of removal or answer for this, because we're going to have to get through 3 lore counters. And our second lore, once it comes back to us, is going to be each opponent discards 3 cards, then mills 3 cards. So they might not even have a hand after this, right? You want to talk about card advantage? This card in and of itself is most likely going to give us card advantage. I understand why it's floating around $30 right now, because this card is absolutely amazing. Amazing. Each opponent discards 3 and mills 3. So before we even get into the last lore here, we're just filling up that graveyard. Our opponents are discarding things. There's so many good things happening right now. We're going to get into like a lot of the combos here soon, but this is insane. So then going into 3, we're going to put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under our control, exile the True Scriptures, then return it to the battlefield front face up. So it now has come back to us for the third turn. And we're now going to take all of our opponent's creatures, and this includes any creatures that might be in our graveyard too. They're all coming back to the battlefield. This card in and of itself is a win con. People are asking you all the time, well, what's the win con for your deck? How are you going to win? What are you going to do? And some people are like, I don't know, attack. Well, if Shieldred's on the field and the graveyard is full and all this stuff is basically being reanimated, yeah, we're sitting pretty, right? We're sitting pretty. There's really no reason we should lose. Not saying we can't. Definitely not saying that. But we're sitting pretty. This card is phenomenal. It has so much synergy with this deck. We're going to circle back to it in a little bit on how that is, but I love this card. So, moving on then, we have the Raven Man, which would be 1 and then 1 black mana for a human wizard. And the effect is, at the beginning of each end step, if a player discarded a card this turn, create a 1/1 blackbird creature token with flying, and this creature can't block. Second effect, much like Tiny Bones, is we can pay the 3 and 1 black mana to tap, and then each opponent discards a card, activate only as a sorcery. So we'd have to activate this on our turn. But the nice thing about the Raven Man is, here we go again. We have another discard outlet that doesn't require us to play a card. As long as we have the mana, we'll just tap it, and we can still force our opponents to dump their hands. And then getting the 1/1 Blackbird creature token's not bad. It's definitely going to give us a board state. It's going to give us board presence. This deck doesn't really require or have like a whole lot of synergy where, like, let's say we're playing Witch's Cauldron, and we're trying to sack creatures and get some sort of draw off of it. We have about 12 cards in here that are basically our draw cards, so we're in a good position on that front. The birds are just kind of there at this point as field presence. This card is not bad. It's not great. 2/1 for 2. Just having the effect to force the discard is what we're after, though, right? Where we don't have to play a card and always possibly be down card advantage. Because remember, Magic is a game of math. It's a game of math and it's a game of card advantage. So next, this card, I love this card. Turok the Dread Cantor, okay? And what we have here is we have a 2/1 for 1 and black mana. And Turok has protection from white, so it can't be blocked, attacked, targeted, all that fun stuff from white, which is great. We know we're not going to get hit with Banishing Light or anything spicy. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be destroyed passively, right? Destroy all creatures on the battlefield. It just can't target. But still, not having to worry about being targeted for exile is pretty nice. And it does have, whenever an opponent discards a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Turok Dread Cantor. So basically, we could just keep procking this guy up if he's staying on the field. If our opponents don't have removal or an answer, we might be sitting pretty well with this guy. And who knows how big he can get. I've had him all the way up to a, oh my god, I want to say like a 10-9 before. It was crazy. And that was just going like back to my turn. It was wild. But it also has a kicker ability, too. So basically, for 4 mana, when Turok enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, target opponent discards 2 cards at random. There's that at random again, right? They're not getting to choose. It's going to be random. So they might be dumping something that they've been sitting on. Maybe they're kind of waiting their turns out a little bit before they pull the plug and really take over the game state. No, Turok is going to have a little bit of fun with them. Discards 2 at random. And of course, if one of your opponents or both of your opponents have 2 cards in hand, oh boy, guess what's going? This card's fun. I like it. It's not perfect. It's not as great as it might seem. But trust me, you're going to feel amazing when you have the 4 mana, you play this, and 4 cards are getting dumped. And if Tiny Bones is on the field, that's 4 cards you're going to get to go into. It's insane. We're coming towards the end of our creature list now, and we have Tymaret Chosen from Death. Now, this card, the way I kind of view it is I like this card in most black decks, and I feel like it should be in there. And here's like my logic on that. So for 2 black, we're going to get a demigod, and its effect is Tymaret's toughness is equal to your devotion to black. Okay, so again, devotion is going to be the swamp symbols and the mana cost of the permanents we control that goes towards our devotion. This deck, like I said, is very enchantment heavy. So if we have a lot of enchantments that are on the field, this is going to stack up. I mean, he might be a 2/10, a 2/7. He might be able to at least protect us, right? But even if we take all of that out of the equation, it's the second effect that I like the most. And that is for 1 and 1 black mana, exile up to 2 cards from graveyards. You gain 1 life for each creature card exiled this way. So, this is phenomenal because let's say one of our opponents is a very annoying, some sort of combination of green, right? So let's call it like Golgari. Like, let's say maybe they're playing something like the Gitrog monster, and there's a lot of graveyard synergy going on, and like we're in a position where we really can't benefit from the Shieldred, right? Like there's just too much graveyard shenanigans going on here, and we just need to deal with something that maybe keeps coming back. There's a lot of black cards too. You know, they go into the graveyard, they come right back, that you're just like, nah, you know what? I don't have a real benefit from this, and I don't want you benefiting from it. Let's get rid of it. So just paying 2 to exile up to 2, and it could be any graveyard. It could even be your own if that's what the situation calls for, and you gain 1 life for each creature. So basically, you could pay 2, and you might even be getting 2 life, and that's going to counterbalance like a lot of our draw cards. Next, we have Virus Beetle. Again, whenever Virus Beetle enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. We're not targeting. So we are, again, Magic's a game of math. It's a game of math and card advantage. So here we are. We're going to play 1 and then 1 black mana, and Virus Beetle's coming onto the field, and each opponent discards a card. So we're playing 1, and basically they're going down 1 each, but we're going to count it as 2. And if Tiny Bones is on the field when the turn comes back to us, card advantage is on our side. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so that's the end of our creatures, and let's start to get into some of our sorcery here. Now, keep in mind, again, the name of the game is discard, right? So we're going to be playing tons and tons of discard because we need things to happen. We don't always want to tap Tiny Bones or the Raven Man to get an effect off. We just want to play it, and then if we have the mana, once those things go into exile, we want to be able to play it that same turn. So, Arterial Flow is a card I have in here. Each opponent discards 2 cards. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. This card, I mean, it's burn. You never know. You might be in a position where this could actually win you the game, especially if we have that Bloodline Keeper out on the field, right? And we have a nice vampire presence going on. So this card could come in handy. And again, each opponent, we're not targeting. It's phenomenal. Next, this is an interesting card. We have Bite of the Black Rose, okay? And it's going to be a 3 and then 1 black. And it has Will of the Council. So starting with you, each player votes for Sickness or Psychosis. If Sickness gets more votes, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until the end of turn. If Psychosis gets more votes or the vote is tied, each opponent discards 2 cards. So basically, let your opponents decide. There's a lot of politicking that can go on here, but really, the way it's going to shake down is you're going to just figure out in the moment what's more beneficial to you. And again, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you're going to want Psychosis, especially if, like, your opponents have a little bit of a board presence. People get greedy, right? They don't want their board presence disrupted, and they might, especially if they're in a position where they have kind of an outlet where they can keep drawing. They might be like, you know what, I'll discard the 2. I want my board presence to stay. And that's okay, because again, Tiny Bones is on the field. Each opponent's discarding 2. That's 4 cards in the graveyard. Oh boy, that's 4 cards with stash counters on them. Incredible. Coercion. Okay, so for 2 and then 1 black mana, a target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it. That player discards that card. This card's nice. It could be used for politicking as well. There's all sorts of things you could do it. Yes, you're going to be targeting, but the beauty of it is they reveal their hand and you choose a card. So we're not limited to what kind of card we can get rid of. We can literally choose anything. So for 3, that's really not that bad. And then next, we have some removal. We have Damnation. Kind of a pricier card, sitting around 23 Card Kingdom. This is pretty nice. It just prevents things from having the ability to be regenerated. Like, nothing's worse than popping the board wipe, and then your opponents are like, all right, you know, I have the ability to regenerate here. No, don't even allow it. Don't even allow it. It's just a nice removal. And again, a lot of these cards, guys, like, let me show you real quick. Like, down at the bottom here, we see that it says, like, $600 almost. This is taken into account, like, a lot of the sideboard. The sideboard of stuff, a lot of stuff I don't even own, right? It's just stuff that you might benefit from more in this deck. The main deck here is basically just stuff that, you know, I own or use, just kind of cheaper options. You could make this deck pretty decently for about $100 to $120. Shieldred is going to be pricey. Cards like Damnation, pricey. But you know what? If you could just add up a little bit, trade some cards in, do what you got to do, move some stuff around, I'm telling you, you're going to have fun with this. I know a lot of people don't like to play black. They feel like, you know, it's a little mean. It kind of takes over the board a little too much. It kind of ruins the game. All I could tell you is I am a black player through and through. Like, I'll play Dimir and Golgari and stuff like that, but I will typically never deviate away from black. It is my baby. So anyways, moving past that, we're now on to the Demogorgon's Clutches. So again, we got a 2 and then 1 black mana for sorcery, and that has target opponent discards 2 cards, mills 2 cards, and loses 2 life. So, for 3, we're going to target, right? We've made our decision. We're going to pick out the person that we feel we're going to benefit from the most. That's what we're after. The only real reason we need them to discard is because we want to play their stuff. So, not only are we going to make them discard 2 cards, we're going to mill them for 2 in the hopes that Shieldred comes back into play later, and maybe we get something nice in there, and the burn is just kind of a cherry. Then we have Despise for 1 black mana. That's a sorcery where target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a creature or planeswalker card from it. That player discards that card. So a good example of like where we want this card to be. This card we benefit from the most early on. So if this card is in our starting hand, right, and let's say one of our opponents is a green player of some sort, Birds of Paradise, any sort of like mana dork that's in their hand, we want them to drop it, because the last thing we want to have happen to this deck is we get out maned. We have to control it, because things could get really bad really quickly if our opponents get a big board state. There is removal in this deck, but we're heavily dependent upon making our opponents drop things, especially expensive things. But early on, mana dorks. If we can make our opponents drop mana dorks, or just early mana rocks, we're going to be in a good position. Trust me. And then I have a Diabolic Tutor in here. I actually really like Diabolic Tutor, and here's why. First, here's the effect of it. So we're going to do 2 and then 2 black mana. It's a sorcery. Search your library for a card and put that card in your hand, then shuffle your library. So, we don't have any effect on here where we're being burned, we're being punished. Yes, it's going to cost us 4, so we're not going to be playing this most likely on turn 1 or 2. However, we need the game to progress a little bit, right? How often do you have like a vampiric tutor or something in your hand and you're just eager to use it right off the bat as perhaps the turn's coming back to you, and then you realize, oh wow, I really didn't go into the card that I needed long term. Sometimes we get a little bit of tunnel vision, and Diabolic Tutor just lets the game kind of unfold as it is for a little bit at least, and then we can decide, okay, what do I need? It's a $2 tutor card, and for 4, I mean, honestly, you might get to play this on like turn 2 or 3, so it's really not bad at all when it comes to tutors. It might honestly be my favorite tutor. And next we have Diplomacy of the Waste. So this is going to be another sorcery, and for 2 and 1 black mana, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. If you control a warrior, the player loses 2 life. So we're not worried about the second part of that. We're simply worried about you choose a non-land card. Sometimes we're going to want to be able to target things, right? There are cards out there that can completely shut down and crush this deck, and if we sense that our opponents could be playing it or they might have it, we need to fish it out. We need to go fishing. And again, too, early game, you choose a non-land card from it, we get to go after mana rocks. Don't get out-maned. And then good old Duress for 1 black. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. That one seems pretty self-explanatory, I think. This is one of those cards where we want it in that opening hand. We have it in the opening hand. We play our swamp. We play this card. We feel like somebody is going to be the threat, especially a green player. And we see if they got any sort of mana rock in there. Maybe any player's really going to have an arcane signet, or a player's going to have a soul ring. And I can tell you right now from firsthand experience, there is nothing better than duressing a soul ring. Might lose some friends, but okay. This is one of my favorite black cards. So, and I think it's underplayed, but Extract the Truth is basically a 1 and 1 black mana sorcery with 2 different effects, and you get to choose one. So the first is target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker card from it, and that player discards that card. And then the second effect is target opponent sacrifices an enchantment. So if somebody has a pesky enchantment on the field, this is our outlet for it. Sure, we absolutely could use it to target something in the hand, but I would strongly recommend hanging on to this for enchantment removal. We don't have a lot of enchantment removal in here. Enchantment removal in black is not the easiest thing to come across. So be wise with this card. Don't get aggressive with it. This card could honestly be more important than we possibly perceive. Here's going into another removal here. Feed the Swarm for 1 mana and 1 black mana, another sorcery. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. So again, we never want to lose life, but that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to playing black. But again, we have an enchantment removal. And that is, without a doubt, really valuable. Trust me. I don't need to tell you guys, I'm sure you know, enchantments suck. When you don't have an answer for them, it becomes problematic really quick. It's just not good. Next, we have Harsh Scrutiny, another sorcery for, and I love the artwork on this, but that's besides the point. For 1 black mana, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a creature card from it. That player discards that card, scry 1. So basically, we need some sort of field presence. We're not running a bunch of creatures. We're going to need something. If we feel like an opponent perhaps has a card that could benefit us, or we feel like we want to see it on our side of the field, let's go for it. Let's go get it, right? Let's think of the things that could benefit us the most. And it does have the ability to scry 1. So for 1, you're going 1 for 1, right? We're playing the card, we're losing the card, our opponent's losing in the card, but we're getting a scry. That's pretty nice. Inquisition of Kozliak. So this is a really good card to have in the opening hand. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it with converted mana cost 3 or less. That player discards that card. Again, we're just paying 1, and we're getting rid of a mana rock, right? We're getting rid of a mana rock. We're getting rid of a mana dork. We're going to slow the game down. We don't want big field presence early on. That's going to kill us. We absolutely need to be in control of this game. If your opponents are not sighing, you're not doing a good job. It needs to be uncomfortable for them. Next, we have Mind Drain. So for 2 and 1 black mana, it's another sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, mills a card, and loses 1 life. You gain 1 life. So, again, we're going to target the opponent that we feel needs to be targeted. They're going to mill, which is a plus for Shieldred later. It also prevents them possibly from getting something they need. It disrupts his deck flow, too. Like, if you're... I hate to be this way, but if, like, an opponent is struggling with mana and you're milling them, you're disrupting card flow. And you'll probably still maintain the edge. And again, losing a life, gaining a life. There's infinite combo synergies we could get into with that when it comes to black, but that ain't what this deck does. We're not worried about that, but keep some of these cards in mind because there are some good infinite combos out there. Very simple card. This card's been printed so many times. Mind Rot. For 2 and then 1 black, target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand. Interestingly enough, you can actually target yourself with this. I've never done it, never had a reason to. But that is interesting. You know, a lot of graveyard synergies. You know, you could get 2 cards in there. That's pretty cool. But again, generically, playing 1, opponent's dropping 2, card advantage. Ostracize. Okay. So again, we're playing 1 black. For target opponent reveals his or her hand, choose a creature card from it. That player discards that card. Again, this is a good opening hand card. We try to keep things in this deck cheap. I want to say, like, our average, I don't remember. I think it was maybe around like 2.5 mana, right? Which, how's that even possible? You can't do that. But yeah, 2.5 mana is basically like the average value in here. So things are typically pretty cheap. We shouldn't struggle too much to have something to play. But yeah, drop the mana dork. Getting into some of the draw, we got Read the Bones. Okay, so it's at sorcery speed, which isn't great. We don't always want to be in that situation. But we're taking budget and price into consideration here. So Read the Bones is for 2 and then 1 black mana. Scry 2. Then draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life. So that's the beauty of this card, Scry 2. If we know what we need, we get to look first, right? We get to scry, see, nope, I don't like it, put it on the bottom. Oh boy, both of these suck, let me put them on the bottom, and then I'll take the chance to draw the 2. If we're mana locked, same situation. This lets us know, okay, hey, am I getting land? Like, I need land. And again, even though it is sorcery speed, let's say we play it, we draw the land, and then we get a card like Ostracize or something that's just 1 mana. We play our land for turn that we didn't play. We're still getting to play. These cards aren't as bad as you think. Sorcery speed's not great, but we're in the game. Another sorcery speed one for 2 and 1 black. We have Risky Shortcut from Aether Drift. We get to draw 2 cards. Each player loses 2 life, right? So that's not as bad. We're all going to share that a little bit. And again, you never know. If somebody's hanging on by 2 life, something as simple as this might put the game away. That's the beauty of Magic. And if we haven't figured it out, Magic is the greatest game that has ever existed. Next, another oldie, Sign in Blood. And for 2 black, another sorcery. Target player draws 2 and loses 2 life. And again, who knows? Your opponent might be hanging on by 2. They might be tapped out. You can force this on them and make them lose 2, or we can draw 2. Unhinge, I actually kind of like. Target player discards a card from his or her land. So we don't get to pick, which isn't great. Kind of expensive for 3, but we're going to draw a card. So we're playing 1. They're dropping 1. Then we're getting 1. So we're plussing 1. We have Vicious Rumors. I love this card too. I love the artwork on it. But anyways, so for 1 black sorcery, Vicious Rumors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. You gain 1 life. So basically, we're not targeting. Each opponent's going to lose 1. They're going to discard 1. And then they're basically going to mill 1. For 1 black, this card is phenomenal. Now moving on to our removal. And I also kind of want to put this under a win con. So, Villainous Wrath. Okay? So for 3 and 2 black, we have a sorcery that says, target opponent loses life equal to the number of creatures they control, then destroy all creatures. So we typically don't want to kill our stuff. But what we do want to do is we want to burn. Burn when we could. Target opponent loses life equal to the number of creatures they control. So it's late in the game, and you find yourself in a situation where somebody has a massive board state. Somehow the squirrels got by. The squirrels got by, and there's a bunch of them, and you're staring death in the face because you've been obnoxious all game with your discard, and now the squirrel player's ready to take you out. When it gets to their turn, of course. This is going to take care of that. This might even end the game. I love this card in general. This might be one of the best black removal, I should say, out there. It's not just because it destroys, but it's that target opponent loses life. The ability to burn like that. This could be a game changer. This is a win con late. Next, we have Consuming Corruption. Now, this is an instant speed for 2 black. And when Consuming Corruption deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, you gain X life, where X is the number of swamps you control. So basically, this is going to be targeted removal, but the real reason that I run it is because you never know what direction this game's going to go in. And if it's later in the game, we took a bunch of hits, we don't have a lot of creatures, we're going to need life, especially if we started drawing and we started paying 2 here, paying 2 there. That stuff adds up quick. We need to get that back a little bit. So, I like it. For 2, late, you got like 7 swamps. This is pretty nice. For a ramp, we have Dark Ritual. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but for any new players, this would be instant speed. If you see Interrupt, that's instant. And add 3 black mana for 1 black mana. I mean, can't beat it. And then for another instant, we have Demon's Due. All right, this is one of the better draw cards, I would say, because it's instant speed. For 3 and then 1 black mana, we get to scry 2, then draw 2 cards, then you lose 2 life. So, again, we're getting to scry 2, we're getting to look at the deck, see what's going on, and decide, okay, this is what I need. No, it's not. Let's try something different. Liliana's Triumph is an instant removal, and I love it. Basically, for 1 and 1 black, each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control Liliana Planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. So, we're not running any Planeswalkers in this deck. I'm sure there's a bunch of builds you could do where you can get around that. There are a couple Liliana Planeswalkers that force discard, but often it'll force you to discard as well. So, not always the worst thing, but it is what it is. So, we're basically using this for the each opponent. Again, for 2 creatures leaving the field, 1 less thing to worry about on both fronts. That's awesome. Farika's Libation, I love this card too. It's another instant, and for 2 and 1 black, you get to choose 1. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. Target opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Again, this is our answer for enchantment removal. Enchantments could be really problematic for this deck. We don't want our opponents to have field presence. We don't want it. We don't want presence in the form of creatures, and we don't want presence in the form of enchantments that are doing wacky things on the back end. So we're going to hang on to this card until we really need it. Now, if it seems like your opponent's going to start stacking enchantments on the field, and you're kind of debating, should I use this now? I would say just use it, right? Because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you need to remove, especially something that gives Shroud to all enchantments your opponent controls. You see that hit the field, and it's the only one. At instant speed, we're popping this thing, because, that ain't happening. Shieldred's Edict is another instant for 1 and 1 black mana, and we have 3 different things we could choose from. 1, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature token. Each opponent sacrifices a Planewalker. This, again, you got to read the situation and decide, is the Planeswalker the issue? Is the creature an issue? Sometimes even a token can be an issue. That's actually kind of cool that we could kind of force the hand like that a little bit. So, great removal. Going into first piece of ramp here, rock-wise, Arcane Signet. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity for 2. Charcoal Diamond. Charcoal Diamond enters the battlefield tapped, and we add 1 black mana for 2. Cold Steel Heart, not a super big fan of it, but I run it anyways. Enters the battlefield tapped, you choose a color, and then you get to tap it, add 1 mana of the chosen color. We just need rocks in there. We need some rocks. Crowded Crypt doesn't really have its full potential use in this deck, but for 2 and 1 black, it's another mana rock where we could tap it to add 1 black mana. Whenever a creature that we control dies, we get to put a corpse counter on the artifact. And then the secondary effect is for 4 and 2 black, we could tap it, sacrifice this, and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed for each corpse counter on this artifact. So, let's say it's late game. You have a couple corpse counters on this, couple things died. Maybe Raven Man was on the field, and we had, some birds, some ravens that we built up, and, they got destroyed, and we were putting the corpse counter on here. Well, if we have the 6 open mana, we could tap this, get the 3 or how many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens on the field, and who knows, we might be able to go for lethal. It's not the greatest card in the world, but it's got some utility. The Entropic Battlecruiser, I really, really love this card besides the design of it. So, this is going to be an artifact spacecraft for 3 and 1 black. And basically, it has Station 1, where whenever an opponent discards a card, they lose 3 life. So basically, the way this would play out is, we have TINYBONES on the field, which is a 1/3. And, we play this. And then we basically station for 1 Tiny Bones, and we're already at whenever an opponent discards a card, they lose 3 life. This is like a ticking time bomb for them. Just by simply tapping the Tiny Bones one time to station this thing, going forward, whenever an opponent, both of them, or how many opponents you have, discards a card, they lose 3 life for each time they discard. The game just got serious with this. And then if, it's a big if, we can get to Station 8 plus, our spacecraft basically turns into 310 with flying and depth touch. And whenever this spacecraft attacks, each opponent discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. So even if our opponents don't have any cards to discard and lose the 3, they're going to lose the 3. On top of any other discarding we got going on. I love this card. You know, and with a lot of decks, there's not a lot of artifact removal, so this thing might linger for a bit, and that's what we're hoping for. If we get to play this, we're hoping it stays. Gets Grimmery for 4 is an artifact that has whenever an opponent discards a card from his or her hand, you may draw a card. This card, so we're paying the 4, it's on the field. And, like, let's say it's early game, we're probably not going to have a lot of mana. So we're playing this passing turn and hoping for the best. But when it comes back to us, when we get the opportunity to start forcing our opponent's hands, whenever an opponent discards a card. So if we have a bunch of 1 black mana discard cards, yeah, we're rocking and rolling here. So we're playing the 1, so we're going 1 for 1, and then we're drawing. So we're always going to +1. Always +1. Card advantage is on our side with this. Mind Stone, Poverty Mind Stone, we should call it. Not Marvel Mind Stone. Basically going to tap and just add 1 colorless to your mana pool. It's still a good mana rock, right? Because it doesn't come in tapped. So really, you're only paying the 1 because you have the open 1 that you could use. And then, of course, you could pay 1 and then tap this and draw a card. You know, late game, that could make or break. So here's a card you don't see too often. This is a card you don't see too often, and I'm not afraid and ashamed to say that I run it in this deck. I'm telling you right now, Prism Ring. So, for 1 colorless, we're going to play an artifact that has, as Prism Ring enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen color, you gain 1 life. Okay? So, we're going to be on the, not necessarily on the heels when we're playing this deck, but if there's any sort of board state or board presence or creatures are getting out of control, expect to take some licks. So, we need life. We're going to need it. We're going to lose it from getting burned on our own draw cards, and we're probably going to get hit a few times, but this is going to keep us in it. I'm telling you, this card is underutilized. Don't sleep on Prism Ring. Old Reliable, the number 1 card you want to see in any opening hand, Soul Ring. Artifact for 1, tap it, and you add 2. We're going to need some protection for Tiny Bones here. So, if we want to pull into the Swiftfoot Boots, we want that on the field. And for 2, basically it's an artifact equipment. Equipped creature is hexproof and haste, and it has equipped 1. So we're going to play it. We're going to put it on Tiny Bones. We're going to protect Tiny Bones, and we're going to hope for the best. And also, haste could be really handy with like the Bloodline Keeper or some of the other cards where if we give it haste and we get to tap it immediately, we're going to get something nice out of it. Tithing Blade. So, for 1 and 1 black mana, it's an artifact. When Tithing Blade enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So, this is just generically good. It keeps us in control, right? We don't want the board getting too big. Anything that's about to make a bunch of stuff, like Krenko Mob Boss comes out, but they didn't like attach it with anything with haste, so we get another turn. Nope, that thing's got to go before it gets out of hand. And then has a secondary effect that we could craft with a creature for 4 and then 1 black. Exile this artifact, exile a creature you control or a creature card from your graveyard. Return this card transformed under its owner's control, craft only as a sorcery. Then it turns into the consuming Spec Ultra. Basically, it's going to be an artifact at the beginning of your upkeep. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's a clock, right? You just start burning. Not the greatest thing, but again, it's good passive removal. We're not targeting. This is one of the best cards in the entire deck. This is where our synergy's at. If we see this card in our opening hand or we draw it early, that's a good thing. So, Bandit's Talent is an enchantment class for 1 and 1 black. And when Bandit's Talent enters, each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land card. So, our opponents basically get to decide how much things mean to them. If you play this card just right, you could force them into a tough decision. But they might say, you know what, I need my non-land cards. I'm just going to discard these 2 lands. Awesome. If Tiny Bones is on the field, those are lands we get to play then. It's just a great card. And then it has level 2 and 3. And level 2 is if we pay the 1 black mana at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 2 life. And that's the name of the game right there. We don't want them to have cards. We want them to be top decking, and they're just going to keep getting burned. It might take a while, but every little bit's going to matter. And then level 3 is for 3 and 1 black mana. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in hand. So, again, your opponents, at least one of them, doesn't have, this requirement, 1 or fewer cards in their hand. You get to draw a card. And this actually, if you read it, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards. You might very well be getting 2. So when it comes to your turn, you might be getting 3 cards. That's insane. This card's amazing. Now, we're getting into some of the fun stuff. Court of Ambition is an enchantment for 2 and 2 black mana. It has, when Court of Ambition enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. If you're the monarch instead, each opponent loses 6 life unless they discard the 2 cards. So again, you played, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. That in and of itself is incredible. If you're the monarch instead, each opponent loses 6 life unless they discard 2 cards. So, we've talked about this. We're not going to have a lot of creature presence. There's a good chance we might not be the monarch, right? Because in order to be the monarch, it's whoever, inflicts the last bit of damage, like you become the monarch, and then you would draw a card at your end step if you're the monarch. So here's how this plays out. We're playing Court of Ambition, right? And we're not going to do anything the rest of the turn. So we became the monarch. So at the end of the turn, we're now drawing a card. So now we're waiting for it to come back to us. So at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. That's up to them. They're probably going to take 3, depending on the situation. And then if we're still the monarch by chance, each opponent loses 6 unless they discard 2. So again, the name of the game is burn. We're trying to burn them. We're trying to create a lot of consequence here. Either they discard or they burn. Choice is up to them, but we are not going to mind if they discard. Another one, we got Court of Locthwain for 2 and then 2 black. And this enchantment is when Court of Locthwain enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of target opponent's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be used to cast it. If you're the monarch, until the end of the turn, you may cast a spell from among cards exiled with Court of Locktrain without paying its mana cost. So, again, let's walk through this. So, for 4, we're going to play this card, right? And then we become the monarch. So now, at the end of turn, we're going to draw a card. So now, we go through all of our opponents, all the shenanigans plays out, and then at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to choose our target opponent and exile the top card of their library. And we can play it as long as it remains exiled, and we can use mana of any type to play it. And then, if we're still the monarch by chance, we can actually cast the card without paying its mana cost. Just let that sink in for a second. Let it sink in. You're the monarch still. It comes back to you, and now you get to say, hey, you know what? I think you're running some spicy things in your deck. I think you have some sweet removal over here, or whatever it might be. Think it through. Target your opponent. You might be getting to play the top card for free, and it's exiled. This card is amazing. You could definitely understand why the cost is at where it's at. A really good staple card in a lot of situations, Hopeless Nightmare, is an enchantment for 1 black mana. And when Hopeless Nightmare enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. So we're going to burn our opponents for 2, and they're going to be dropping 2. And when Hopeless Nightmare is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you get to scry 2. And then, of course, we actually have a sack outlet on it. So for 2 and 1 black, we could sacrifice it. So it's pretty nice. You know, we get to scry on it. This is the kind of card that you want in that opening hand again. This is an opening hand card. Megrim, for 2 and 1 black, it's an enchantment that has whenever an opponent discards a card, Megrim deals 2 damage to that player. This card has like a lot of synergy with the deck. Doesn't need to stay in there, I don't know. Because you have to take the turn to play the card, which means you're most likely not having a turn where discarding is happening. It's the little things like that you want to think about. So this is probably one of those cards you could decide, well, do I want it in there? Do I not want it in there? Do I want it a true discard deck? I like it. I leave it in there. It has utility to it. Burning for 2 can add up. Next, we got Momentum Breaker, which is going to be a 1 and then 1 black mana. And Momentum Breaker is an enchantment from Aether Drift that has the start your engine mechanic. So if you have no speed, it starts at 1 and then it increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life with a max speed is 4. And then whenever this enchantment enters, each opponent sacrifices a creature or vehicle. So here we have vehicle removal, and you never know, you might need vehicle removal. And each opponent who can't discards a card. And then for 2, we could sacrifice it, and you gain life equal to your speed. So this card's got utility for 2. I love this card, right? We're not targeting. We're forcing both opponents to do something. And then we could also gain life off of it. And now we're at a point where we might all suffer here. We might all suffer a little bit, but that's what we signed up for. So we have Oppression, which is an enchantment for 1 and then 2 black mana. And whenever a player casts a spell, that player discards a card. So here's basically how this benefits us. So we're playing Oppression. Oppression's on the field, and now the turn is being passed around. Our opponents might be reluctant to even do anything because they don't want to drop anything in their hand. It's essentially a wasted turn. That's what Oppression does. It slows the game down so it does not get out of control. It puts the ball back in our court. Once Oppression is on the field, we do not have a sack outlet for it. I have nothing in the deck that we can use to actually get rid of it if it becomes a nuisance. So we got to really think about it. once oppression's on the field, if our opponents don't have removal for it, it might be there all game. That's not to say when we start making them discard with tiny bones, we're not going to get into something that, we could target it, blow it up, or do whatever. It's a possibility, but just be mindful. There's also not a lot of graveyard synergy beyond Sheoldred. So be mindful of what you're dumping. Be mindful of if you're going to play this. I like it. This card is full of chaos, and I love every second of it, but that's because there's probably something wrong with me. And next, we have one of my favorite enchantments. It's not even close. I friggin' love this card. Painful Quandary, an enchantment for 3 and 2 black. Says whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. This is the card that we just want to get on the field as soon as we could. If you have this in your opening hand, like often I try to do math when I have my opening hand. I try to take into consideration, okay, when am I going to get to play this? How many turns from now? If this is 5 mana and I have 2 lands in my hand and I'm saying I'm going to keep this hand, I might not be playing this for a while. But if it's turn 6 and I got 5 mana down and I'm drawing into this, it's like those heavenly bells are going off, right? Like the pearly gates are opening up, because this is like the card we want. We want this on the field. We want consequences. We want to say if our opponents play this game, they're going to suffer. They might as well just leave cards in their hand so we could just make them discard it. Phyrexian Arena, some people love it, some people hate it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. It's an enchantment for 1 and then 2 black. The choice is yours. I mean, you could probably tech it out with something else. I don't know. There's no sack outlet, again, for it. We don't really have a means to get rid of it. So if it's on the field and we find ourselves in a bad situation, that's just the nature of the game. Think carefully. If you got a better solution for this, there's probably better cards we could play. Like I said, we took budget into account and a couple other things. We're trying to keep it around 100, not that we're super close, but I think we built this deck around 130. Quest for the Nile Stone is an enchantment for 1. This card's pretty interesting. So, whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a quest counter on this enchantment. And then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand and this enchantment has 2 or more quests on it, you may have that player lose 5 life. So, basically, whenever an opponent discards a card, we put a quest counter on it. That's easy, right? This thing's going to have the 2 quest counters on it in no time. The question is, when will our opponents not have any cards in hand? That could take a little bit of time, depending on the circumstance. So, is this card guaranteed great in this deck? Not necessarily. There's a lot of factors you got to take into consideration. You got to move quickly, and you got to hope that you're in a situation where your opponents don't have cards. But I'll tell you this. If even one of your opponents is getting burned for 5, that's going to suck. And the other thing we want to take into consideration is there are better cards than this in the deck enchantment-wise. So we have to start asking ourselves, how much removal is out there? Our opponents start spending time and mana resources to remove things. If they're spending it on something like this, then we're protecting other things, and we're going to be getting into the absolute best thing we're trying to protect in here soon. And this is it right here. Waste Not. Enchantment for 1 and 1 black mana. And the effect on here is whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 mana. And whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, draw a card. So basically, this is the card we want. Like, if I have Diabolic Tutor, or I have any sort of tutor, and I'm really strongly considering, okay, what is my best thing here that I could get into? This is what we want, guys. We want Waste Not. We want it not necessarily for effect 1, which is fine if we're going to get a field presence, and even effect 3, whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, draw a card. That's awesome. What we want is for it to be on our turn, and whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 black mana. We want them to discard lands, so we get mana to play more cards to make them discard more stuff. You see how that works? Waste Not is like the best discard card when it comes to forcing your opponents to do stuff. Love the artwork on here. I feel like it's super fitting. I have nothing but good things to say about this card. It's almost like you want to put a bunch of tutors in the deck just so you're going to get this card. I love it. So now we're coming to the end here. We have 2 lands, basically. 2 non-basic lands. And this is the most important one of the 2. So Briar Reach Sanitarium is basically a legendary land. We could tap it for 1 colorless, or we could pay 2 mana and tap this land. Each player draws a card, then discards a card. So again, we're forcing our opponents to discard. We're benefiting from Tiny Bones. We're benefiting from God knows how many burn cards at this point. And if Waste Not is on the field, something is happening, right? We're drawing a card. We're getting mana. We're getting ramped up, or we're getting that 2/2 zombie. This is the land we want in our opening hand. If we draw into it early, awesome too. But here's what I would say. If your opening hand looks like 3 mana, 2 black in this, or 1 black in this, I'm almost tempted to say keep it, because targeting lands is not a super common thing. Can decks do it? Yes. Can it happen? Yes. Will I regret saying this? Probably. But it's not super common. So if this is in your opening hand, keep it. This is a great avenue for us. Yeah, we're going to be discarding, but we got to get the stuff that we need. Reliquary Tower I have in here. I just like having it in almost any deck. You have no maximum hand size. We don't want to find ourselves in a cheeky situation where somebody forces a bunch of cards on us. They're trying to mill us. They're trying to get us to discard. We don't want cheeky stuff happening to us. So I would say run this. Another option is also Thought Vessel as a mana rock. Between the two of them, I feel like lands have just better protection. I feel like lands are less likely to be targeted. Plus, this doesn't come in tap, so I prefer this over Thought Vessel. But if you want to run this and Thought Vessel, I guess there's probably nothing wrong with that. And then that's it. We're just going to go into our swamp. So that's the core of the deck, guys. Basically, our theme is we're trying to get our opponents to discard so we could play their stuff. That's what we're doing. We're trying to play their stuff. We're trying to burn them. We're trying to make sure that worst case scenario, we're getting into their graveyard with Sheoldred if all else fails. And we're always keeping the pressure on. We're going to try to burn them with Gary. We're going to try to make sure they burn if they search. Rankle, we're just having a good old time. And Timaret, we're making sure, like, if there's stuff in the graveyard that just keeps coming back, or, like, it's not even, the juice ain't worth the squeeze for us to hold out for it, get rid of it. I had put together a sideboard that's effective utility. They are expensive cards. Again, look at the bottom here. We're at $600. That's because we're including the sideboard. If we take the sideboard out, the core of what we just discussed is probably 120 to 130. And of course, if you have a lot of these cards already, it'll be even less. But let's go over the sideboard real quick. Just Bitter Blossom or Bitter Bloom Bearer, I have in here. It's a pricier card. You know, at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, create 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying. for 2 black. It's not bad. It gives us board presence, right? So basically, we could spend more time playing discard spells and not worried about if the board state's building up on the other ends, getting poked at, right? We got our blue and black fairies to basically protect us or at least hold out unless there's trample to deal with. Same thing goes with Bitter Blossom. It's a 1 black mana. It's a tribal enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, and you create 1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. Again, we're losing 1. We have some means to get life back in this deck. Getting a field presence, could it be good? Yeah. I mean, you could always lower the creature count maybe and go with this, but Deadly Dispute is a good ramp card. Basically for 1 and 1 black at instant speed, at an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. We get to draw 2 and create a treasure token. I would like this card more with like Bitter Bloom Bearer or Bitter Blossom. I'd rather get rid of like those token creatures than our own. Although we do have creatures that don't have a lot of use to us, though, unless they have a means to re-enter the battlefield, like Elder Fang Disciple, right? When it enters, each opponent discards, and then that's it. We just have a 1/1 on the field. That's the whole thing, right? Same with Virus Beetle. Like, sure, we could probably sack them, but we're making the assumption that out of our 100-card deck, and are only 13 creatures, we're going to even come into them. So we don't know. Demonic Tutor. If you can afford it, more power to you. Search your library for a card and put that card in your hand, then shuffle your library for 1 and 1 black. I mean, self-explanatory. You want to put this in and you want to go grab Waste Not, the discard shenanigans is going down, I would say have this card. Giza the Hellraiser. I like Giza for 3 and then 2 black, and she has a ward ability, so if she gets targeted, like for removal or whatever, your opponents would have to pay an additional 2, and then pay 2 life. And then she gives skeletons and zombies +1/+1, and they have menace, so Tiny Bones, I guess, kind of benefits from this, and then whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. And this only triggers once each turn. So that means that it could trigger on our turn and all of our opponent's turn when it comes back to us, which is kind of cool. But we have to target. We don't have a whole lot of target spells. We have target spells, but the question is, if we have Giza, are we going to have any of them, right? I could understand if it was target after target after target removal, and we wanted to run Giza. Let me just say this. Giza as a commander in a deck that targets graveyards or targets hands or whatever, awesome. I love her. This is an awesome commander deck that we might do another deck build on. But in this deck, I don't know. Jet Medallion, if you got it, for 2. It's an artifact. Black spells you cast cost 1 less. So we have a lot of spells in here that are 1 and then 1 black. Honestly, Jet Medallion's pretty good. Because, like, let's say, turn 1, play the thing. Turn 2, Jet Medallion. Turn 3, you might get to play 3 2-drops, right? And that could be a super big deal. You might actually force your opponent to completely empty out their whole hand. They might not even want to play the game. Jet Medallion can be really disgusting when it comes back like around turn 3. All right, guys. So here's the thing. A lot of people like playing it. Necropotence, for 3 black, it's an enchantment. Skip your draw phase. Whenever you discard a card, remove that card from the game. Pay 1 life. Set aside the top card of your library. Put that card in your hand at the beginning of your discard phase. I've thought about it a couple times. I really just don't like it. I just don't think it's going to work out well in this deck. Because basically, we need to win quickly, and we don't really have the means to win quickly, if that makes sense. I feel like we're just going to hurt ourselves in the long run with this. If you feel like you have a way to make this work, put it in the comments or something. I'm just not crazy about it. I thought it over a couple times, and I'm just like, it's not my comfort zone. So if hey, you know what? If you got an idea, let us know. Turgid, God of Fright. I love this card in general. Basically, it's a two-sided. So for 3 and 2 black, we get a legendary creature god with menace. And whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So if your opponent is sacrificing stuff on their own volition, or you're forcing them to discard, that's where this card really pays off. It pays for itself. I don't even have to get into much of the detail on this end. You're just going to benefit from that stuff. And then you also have the choice, though, if you want to play it this way, and it has utility, trust me. For 3 and 1 black mana, you could do Turgid's Lantern, which is a legendary artifact, where if you tap it, target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. And if it's late game, and we have a lot of mana on the field, we could actually pay 4 to untap it. And we could keep forcing it. You know what I mean? Like, you could keep forcing it. You could burn your opponent. I have won games with this card before. Not in this particular deck. I have a Shieldred deck that I run with Shieldred and the True Scriptures as the commander. But this is the kind of card you want in that. If you have this card, I would say put it in discard. It's going to be fun. The Darkness Crystal from the Final Fantasy set. We got 2 and then 2 black mana for a legendary artifact that has black spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So that in and of itself is good. 2s become the 1s, the 3s become the 2s. Like, it's nice. But it also has, if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it, and you gain 2 life. And then, for 4 and 2 black, we can tap it, put target creature card exiled with the Darkness Crystal onto the battlefield, tapped under your control with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. So, things that are dying, that are non-token creatures, are basically getting exiled to the card. And then as the game goes on, we have the option to just tap this thing and bring them back out with +2/+2. I mean, this card's great. For $6, I actually think that this card is amazing. I would probably say this is the kind of card you're going to want to run in most black decks no matter what. It's just a really good mana rock, but, like, on top of that, though, just having the ability to, like, bring the exiled cards back with 2 +1/+1s, and depending on, like, what sort of, like, ETB triggers and stuff they might have, this thing could be nuts. We got another Tiny Bones. We got Tiny Bones the Pickpocket. For 1 black mana, it's a legendary creature skeleton rogue with Death Touch, and when Tiny Bones the Pickpocket deals damage to a player, you may cast target non-land permanent card from that player's graveyard, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. So, here's the thing about this card. So, you hit your opponent for damage, and you got, like, 4 open mana, which means, like, you could play anything up to 4 that's a non-land card in that player's graveyard. Awesome. Sweet. My only gripe with this card is that, it forces us to swing. So, here we are with Tiny Bones with Death Touch swinging. typically, in my experience, our opponents will go 1 for 1. They'll be like, okay, you know what? This thing's annoying, but I got to get rid of it now. I'm just going to, chump block it, and there we go. I've dealt with it, and I'm done with. Um, I would say this card is good if you have the ability to make it unblockable, like Rogue's Passage or like I don't know, some sort of equipment that you could attach to it. Then it's a whole different ball game. But that's a big what if, right? Like, what if I get Tiny Bones in my hand? What if I then have the ability to make it unblockable? It's a little bit too much what if. I'm not nuts about it. If you want to run it, if you have a good idea around it, go for it. It could be a decent commander if you're going to build around protecting it. But yeah, I left it out. Now, Tiny Bones Trinket Thief. So it's a 1 and 1 black legendary creature skeleton rogue that has, at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So it's at the end of each end step. So if you have enough mana to pull it off, and it's going from turn to turn, and they're discarding, you're basically drawing on all their turns. But honestly, it's the secondary effect that's desirable. So for 4 and 2 black, each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. That's wild. This is the kind of card where, okay, it's late game. You have like maybe 8 to 9 mana out on the field, and here you are with Tiny Bones. Your opponents have no cards in hands, and life totals are low from getting burned and all that fun stuff. So you're paying the 1 and the 2. Tiny Bones is going on the field, and then you're gonna pay 6, right? Each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. And they're losing the 10 life because they got no cards. Now, let's say they have no cards, but they have a little bit more than 10 life. Well, you could just play it again if you have the mana. And who's to say you don't have it? You very well might. You never know. It's just a great burn card with the nice point of having the draw engine on it as well. Sometimes opponents look at this card and they're like, I don't think if it's really much of a threat. They kind of miss that each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. I've seen it happen. It has happened to me in games where people like forget that that's even a thing, and then you're like, well, okay, I'm just gonna burn you. GG's. I love that card. It's a little bit on the pricier side, but Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. I mean, I don't know. Each land is a swamp in addition to its other land types. Could come in handy with the Dryer Reach that we have, Reliquary Tower. I don't know. I'll tell you what, I don't own one myself. Like, I don't have this card. It's one of those things I just don't have. I'd like to have it, but I don't. In this particular deck, I don't think you really need to run it. It's pretty pricey. Vampiric Tutor is a 1 instant. Search your library for a card, then shuffle your library, put that card on top of it. You lose 2 life. I'm not crazy about this tutor. Like, a lot of people use it, but the thing for me about putting cards on top of libraries is, like, it leaves too many things out in the open. Like, you know, I could understand if, like, the turn's coming over to me and I pop it, right, at instant speed. I have 1 open, I pop it then, and then I search, then I'm going to draw it. But I'll tell you, man, nothing's worse than playing this and then somebody pops an instant that forces you to mill. That's pretty bad. I've been there before, and it's not a good feeling, so it's up to you. But that's the end of it. That's the end of our sideboard, and that is the end of this deck build. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to have a link to my Mox field here if you want to go ahead and build this thing or play around with it. If you have any suggestions in the comments, drop them in there. I'd love to hear what you guys think. It's not perfect by any means. Like I said, you could probably build this thing for about 130. That 582.75 we're looking at the bottom there really takes into account this sideboard, trust me. So it's a fun deck. You might get targeted during Commander Night, but you know what? Even if you don't win, you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. And well, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for joining me on something a little bit different. And well, till next time.